The live streaming recording has now started, so I'll take this adherent for the Executive Committee of the 2nd of October 2024. We have present Councillors Allison, Anderson, Brown, Carmichael. We have apologies from Councillor Chalmers and Councillor Johnson-Dempsey is substituting. We have present Councillors Clark, Convery, Cooper, Cowan, Devlin, Fagan. I'll just check if Councillor Ferguson-Miller is in the meeting. We don't have Councillor Ferguson-Miller in the meeting. We have present Councillors Frame, Hamilton, Kerr, Logan, Loudon, McCallan, McClymont. We have apologies from Councillor McCreary. We have present Councillors Leslie MacDonald, Davy McLachlan, Richard Nelson, Norman Ray. We have apologies from Councillor Razak and Councillor Cowie is substituting. We have present Councillor Robb, Ross, Shearer and Walker. I also see online we have Councillor Elaine McDougall. Councillor McDougall, can you advise if you're substituting?
I am, yes. Gladys.
Thanks, Councillor. I'll hand back to the Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Come to item 1, which are declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I don't see any in the room or online. Can I come then to item 2, which are the minutes of the previous meeting? Are there any questions on the minutes of the previous meeting? I don't see any questions. Can we agree those as a correct record?
Agreed.
We're agreed. Come now to item 3, which is our monitoring, first of our monitoring items on the revenue budget, and Jackie Taylor will speak to this report.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, councillors. This is our revenue budget monitoring report, and this covers the period to the 9th of August 2024. At section 4 of the report, we're reporting on the general fund budget, and we are reporting a projected break-even position for the year. Sections 4.3 onwards provide some information on a number of key budget areas, many of which you have heard me talk about before. At 4.3, just reiterating the position on teacher numbers that I've previously mentioned. Funding for teacher numbers is conditional on councils agreeing to maintain teacher numbers in year. £145 million is set aside by the government for this. Our share is £9.4 million. We know that the government will accept mitigations presented by councils if teacher numbers are reduced. However, we will not know until after the publication of the census in December whether our mitigations will be accepted. We do expect our teacher numbers to reduce this year. At section 4.5, making the point around employers' pension contributions for teachers, which has increased this year, a cost to the council of £5.5 million. However, we have been advised that we will receive funding from the Scottish Government for this when they receive it from the UK Government. That's still awaited. Section 5 of the report details the information around our housing revenue account. We are projecting a break-even position, and details are provided in Appendix 2 to the report for this. On page 14, Appendix 1 of the report covers the information around our general fund budgets. If I take you back to the recommendations, we're asking that the projected break-even position and the actual spend to the 9th of August for general fund is noted, and that the projected break-even position and actual spend for the housing revenue account at the 9th of August is noted. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Jackie. Are there any questions on that report? In the room or online? I don't see any questions. So can we agree the report?
Agreed.
I come now to item 4. That's on our capital budget monitoring, and it's back to Jackie.
Thank you, Chair. So, same period covered to the 9th of August, this time for capital. Section 4 of the report reports that for general fund, we have a programme of just over £87 million. That includes proposed adjustments to the programme, which are detailed in Appendix 1. I'll cover those in detail in a second. They include Hamilton Town Centre Master Plan, £100,000, which is partially offset by a reduction in budget for electric vehicle expansion. We are forecasting for the year that we will maximise our spend on capital. However, at 4.6, as I've mentioned before, we do expect a new timetable for works and spend profiles for our secondary school projects. That's being concluded, and we would hope to bring back an exception to the next Executive Committee to reprofile that project. The schools will still be available for use when they're needed. Our actual spend position is covered at section 4.7, and we've spent £11.3 million to the 9th of August. Our housing programme is detailed at section 5. We have a programme of £77.2 million for the year. Again, we're looking to maximise spend in that area, and we spent £15.5 million to the 9th of August. Appendix 1 of the report on page 20 covers the proposed adjustments this cycle. As I mentioned, there's £100,000 for Hamilton Town Centre Master Plan. This was funding that was agreed through the Finance and Corporate Committee from Hamilton Common Good towards that project. And also in relation to electric vehicle expansion, there was monies that were due to come to individual councils for this project but are now being passed through the city region. Therefore, £40,000 will be reduced from our programme. The rest of the appendices to the report cover the overall programme broken down over resource and services, and also detail the funding for the capital programme. So if I take you back to the recommendations, we're asking that the position on the General Fund Capital Programme and the Housing Capital Programme be noted, and that the adjustments to the programme at Appendix 1 be approved. And just to note that the programme will continue to be monitored by the Financial Resources Scrutiny Forum. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Can I ask if there are any questions on that report? I'll come to Councillor Ross.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. It was just to welcome the initial stages of the Hamilton Town Centre Master Plan being put into work. I think everyone will agree that the sooner we get started in this, it's going to take some time to do. But the very fact that we've got 100,000 from the Common Good Fund to start the initial stages is going to be very welcome to everyone. So thank you very much for the decision you've taken.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to the members of the Finance and Corporate Resources Committee for taking that decision that will allow us to regenerate the town centre over the coming years. Are there any other questions? I don't see any. So can we agree the report? Agreed. And come to item 5, which is on updates to funding.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a report I bring to every committee. It's covered at the background at section 3. In-year funding can change, and this can be in relation to funding for specific purposes or funding expected and already included in our budget planning. For this period, we have one item, and that's detailed at Appendix 1 of the report. It's in relation to funding that we've received, £1.2 million, and that's in relation to children's social care pay uplift for commission services. That will enable us to pay the uplift for any eligible social care, children's social care workers in the private, voluntary and independent sectors, in order to enable them to receive a minimum rate of £12 per hour for their eligible staff. So in terms of recommendations, we're asking that additional funding of £1.2 million be noted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I ask if there are any questions? Can I come to Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Jackie for the report. I'd like to inquire about the change of name and the title of the report and the removal of the words Scottish Government. I'd like to ask who made this suggestion that the title should be changed, who made the decision and why the decision was made to change the title of this report.
Okay, the title of the report used to be Additional Funding from Scottish Government and Other Sources, and I think you'll recall at the last meeting, or possibly the meeting before that, I suggested we should rename the report, and that was driven by the inaccurate reporting of the contents of that report by a member of the Scottish Parliament who we subsequently had to correct publicly. However, I think our officials have also presented a case, you'll see in section 3 in the background of the report, that sets out exactly what the report is for and why the new title is more accurate. If anyone on that corporate management team wants to respond to that, they are welcome to. Paul.
Okay, no, thank you, Councillor Clark. And to be honest with you, for a period of time, the naming of this report has caused confusion. And often the items that are reported in there are expected. And what Jackie's doing in the report is updating the budget, right, in respect of notification of monies. It's not always additional or new to the council. So that's why the change in title has been made to update to funding. It's still clear And there is no getting away from the fact that the vast majority of the council's money does come from the Scottish Government, and that's still picked up under purpose of report. It's the same wording that was there before, refers to the Scottish Government and other external sources, but it's to try and clear up a bit of confusion around the content of the report. Thanks, Councillor.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, I mean, I would question the point around this would make it more accurate, considering it states in the report the purpose of it is to update on funding that's been made available to the council by the Scottish Government. That is the main purpose of all the reports that we get. So I don't understand as to why the words Scottish Government have been removed from it. The only conclusion that could be come to is, you know, done for political reasons. So I would question that point, but it's not a hill we're going to die on. But again, unsure why it has to have been changed. I'm not suggesting any political involvement from officers, but from council political leadership.
Right. Well, I would reiterate what I've already said around why I think it is important to make sure it is accurate. The officers have given their view about the inaccuracy of the previous title, and I would make the point, it is a political point, but it's a political point across parties that I labour at every meeting, that there is a difference between the overall funding package this council receives and that core funding package that we receive, and that core funding package we received has not seen additionality for some time. It is in decline. Okay. Are there any other questions? Nope. Can we agree the report? Agreed. On updates to funding? Thank you. We're agreed, and I'll come now to item 6, which is on the... It's first for items for decision, and it's on civic engagement in Zealand, Holland. And can I invite Ian Strachan to speak to that report?
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Councillors. Purpose of the report to request approval for the Provost and Civic Officer to attend a civic event in Zealand, Holland at the end of October. In July of this year, the Liberation Museum Zealand and Holland invited the Provost to attend activities related to the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Scheldt, taking place at the end of October. Given the links to South Lanarkshire as summarised in section 3 of the report, it's proposed that the Provost accept this invitation and attend the event to represent South Lanarkshire, accompanied by the civic officer, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions on this report? Let's come to Councillor Johnson Dempsey.
Thank you. We've no issues with this civic engagement, but we do have a couple of questions. The report has the Provost visiting Zealand, Holland. So I'll be a bit cheeky and ask, is she visiting both Zealand and Holland, since Zealand isn't in either North or South Holland, it's its own province? Kind of like asking, you're doing something in Scotland, England. The second question, which is the most substantive one, is the International Civil Aviation Organisation, a UN agency, calculates the climate impact of 2 passengers flying economy return from Glasgow International to Amsterdam, which is the closest commercial flight, as approximately 7.1 metric tonnes of CO2. Why is this not included in the climate impact report?
Ian, do you want to respond to that?
Thank you for your questions. In terms of the first point, that's my error. I'm afraid that's not something I was so familiar with, but I'll accept that. But that's my fault in terms of the province of Zealand. In terms of the second point, we looked at alternative options. I think I maybe referenced that there in terms of train, ferry, road. But looking at cost, looking at time, this was on balance the more suitable option, we thought. We didn't look into that level of detail.
Yes, on you go.
Thank you for that answer. Totally accept that. That's all quite reasonable. But the point of the climate impact should be to state the climate impact. It's for officers to find that impact and then present it to us as members. We should be making the final decision whether we believe that on balance the impacts are suitable. But thank you.
Can I simply make the point that there are a number of considerations that we would have to take into account, not just climate, but as Ian Strachan has said, finance and perhaps other considerations that we might not wish to share in a public forum. But the overall, that is what has allowed the recommendation to be made. Can I ask, if there are no further questions, can we agree the report?
Agreed.
We are agreed. Come now to item 7, which is on religious representation on the Education Resources Committee. And again, I'm going to ask Ian Strachan to speak to that item.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be familiar with having seen these reports previously. What we're looking for is Executive's approval to replacing John Mulligan, who has stepped down as the Roman Catholic Church Religious Representative on Education Resources, to be replaced by Ms Angela Milton, who is the Church's nominee. Happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions on this report? No. Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
We are agreed. Come now to item 8, which is on the appointment of trustees to South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture Board. And again, I'm going to ask Ian to speak to this item.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the report to request approval for the appointment of trustees to South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture Board. There's two aspects to this. Firstly, briefly by way of background, as members will recall, the current governance and constitutional arrangements for the Leisure Trust were approved by the Council at its meeting in June 22. The Constitution sets out the eligibility criteria, the appointment process for trustees, and this process requires the Council to give written notice to the Leisure Trust for the appointment of a trustee, and also to be guided by the Trust Nominations Committee in relation to the selection of trustees. In other words, the Council has to consider proposed appointments, hence this report. The Nominations Committee comprises 5 trustees, including the Chair, but also 2 elected members. Firstly, recent retirement of a trustee who is neither an elected member, an officer, or trade union representative. In line with the Constitution, existing Leisure Trust governance arrangements, there was an open recruitment process. Following that, Dr Gordon Jack is the preferred candidate and recommended by the Nominations Committee for appointment, and as referenced in the report, seeking Executive Committee's agreement to that appointment. Secondly, notification has been received of the resignation of Councillors Anderson and Cowan as trustees from the board, and since the point of issuing this report, Councillor Lambie has also tendered his resignation, and nominations are sought to fill those vacant positions. In the first instance, in line with existing practice, that would be for the SNP group and the Conservative group to decide if they wish to take up their respective vacant positions. Happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions on this report? No. Not seen any questions in this report. Can I separate this into 2 items? The first recommendation is the recommendation that the appointment of Dr Gordon Jack is approved. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. And the second is that nominations are sought to fill the vacant trustee positions for elected members or officers of the councils. That is, as Ian Strachan has said, relates to the vacancies for the SNP and Conservative spaces. Are there any nominations from those groups? And can I come to Councillor Ross?
Thanks, Chair. We do not wish to make any nominations from our group. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Nelson?
Thank you, Chair. We don't wish to nominate MD to South Lanarkshire Leisure and Culture Board either.
Thank you very much. There have not been any nominations from those groups. Can we agree the report overall?
Agreed.
We are. I'll come then to item 9, which is amendments to the membership of committees. And Ian, back to Ian Strachan to speak to that item.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just looking for committee's approval to Councillor Johnson Dempsey replacing Councillor Frayne on the Planning Committee and the Planning Local Review Body. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions on that report? Not seeing any. Okay, can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Come now to item 10, which is the Council's approach to impact assessments. This is the first of our items for noting. Ian, back to yourself.
Thank you. The purpose of the report is to provide an overview of the impact assessments the Council is required to undertake or is otherwise committed to undertaking, and provide a form of integrated impact assessment proposed to be used going forward. Members will remember, or by way of brief background, that at its August meeting, the committee approved a report on the consumer duty which sought agreement to moving towards an integrated impact assessment, where it was noted that a report would be brought back to members in the autumn, which is this report. We've included brief details on the most notable assessments that the Council might be required to conduct in Appendix 1, and also at 3.6 just highlighted some comments that Audit Scotland has recently made in connection with local authorities and equality impact assessments. Pardon me. Following a review of the Council's current approach, practice in other authorities, it's been considered that we could make some changes to enhance the Council's current processes. As we say in the report, an integrated impact assessment approach would include all relevant assessments within a single document, so that all relevant legal duties are considered, assessed at the same time. We've included a proposed form of impact assessment in Appendix 2. We've had that the subject of a peer review by an external law firm. We're arranging training for officers, elected members as well. I think there's a date in the diary on the 28th of this month to ensure that everyone is familiar with the proposals and to make sure, importantly, you're yourself familiar with it for consideration as proposals come forward. Noting also at 4.5 a small change that we would make to the committee report template going forward to reflect the change from inequality impact assessments. Another probably notable change is that going forward the integrated impact assessments would be published, available online at the time of publication of council reports as well, so that that's available. And then going back to the recommendations, asking that committee note the contents of this report and the proposed form of integrated impact assessment that would be used going forward. Happy to take any questions.
Ask if there are any questions in this report, and can I come to Councillor Johnston Dempsey?
Pardon me. Thank you again. In general, our group support the concept of rationalising the various impact assessments. We are, however, concerned that whether our staff have the appropriate training provided to them in order to carry out those assessments. For example, when cuts were made to libraries and leisure centres and to concessionary pricing for child, youth and old age sport, the Council did not produce its own impact assessments, but rather relied on those from the perspective of SLLC. And again, to come back to an earlier item at this very committee today, we were told there was no environmental impact of flying from Scotland to the Netherlands. The answer that there are impacts, there are like a number of impacts, it makes sense, but it's for officers to identify all those impacts and present them to members, not decide on the merits of those impacts themselves. It is then for members to decide politically at committee on balance where we want to decide on those factors and any other factors we see fit. Pardon me, sorry, see fit. And also accept, as the chair said, that there are factors that we wouldn't want to discuss in public, and I totally understand that, and obviously I'm aware of the ones that he was referring to with the earlier item. But we do have the ability to sit without press and public. So again, we do discuss. We do support the proposed impact assessment change. But we're just looking for some assurances that our staff have the appropriate expertise and training to carry out those assessments. Thank you.
I'll come to perhaps to Michelle to pick up the issue around training. But before I do, can I just make the point, I don't think there was anything in the previous response that could be construed as saying there is no environmental impact flying. I think what the report was suggesting is that we have looked at different options, and that's allowed us to make the recommendation that we have, or our officials to make the recommendation that we have accepted. Can I come to Michelle on the issue of training?
Thank you. Just to say in advance of this, we were obviously doing a number of impact assessments. In any event, we've been doing that for a number of years, and there has been training for staff. There's a number of staff who've been doing this for a long time in the council, as well as new staff. We picked that up at induction. We have refreshed that again, given the new duties that we have had, and that has been built into our new training. and the equalities team will support that and will have oversight of that and will support the staff when they're carrying that out. And we'll also have a peer review process in place to ensure there's some oversight there as well in terms of what we're doing. Thank you.
Sorry, just to correct you, Chair, the exact quote was, "There are no climate change, sustainability and environmental implications from this report." So the report very much did say that there were no environmental implications.
I think that is relation into those that would necessitate an impact assessment. I don't know if we've dealt with that item. The item's been agreed. Are there any questions on this item? Councillor Loudon.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to add to what Councillor Johnson-Dempsey was saying there, to give a further example, I had raised issues when the decision was being made about school transport and changing the distance eligibility for that. We had an example from North Lanarkshire Council, of course, who'd already been looking at that decision, and they had included, when they were looking at their impacting statements, statements around gender and how it was going to be women that were disproportionately affected. The first version of what we had through South Lanarkshire didn't include that, and it was only later in the discussion, not that it made any difference to the decision that certain political groups had taken, but that wasn't included at the discussion at the time. So I just wonder, in addition to the training that's being provided to our officers when they're writing these reports, if we're looking at best practice from other councils, because that was an example that another council had considered and we hadn't.
Okay, I'll come to Ian Strachan maybe to pick that up. Ian?
Thank you, Councillor Loudon. I mean, certainly, yes, we have looked at what other authorities are doing. And I think, you know, one of the benefits that we see from this is bringing all the impact assessments into a single place, retraining relevant staff, looking again at the sort of approval process route for completion of these to try and help ensure more consistency and a robustness of approach, which I think will be beneficial. And what we've also said is that following, I expect, you know, this sort of budget round towards the end of the year, we'll review that, see how that has gone and see what further refinements we can make. These are not new assessments. This is a refresh of existing practice. But I take on board all the points, but I think it'll be beneficial for the council and help support officers.
Okay, are there any other questions, either in the room or online? Don't see any. Can I just make the point around our move to integrated impact assessment, which we think is welcome? Obviously, we typically apply these when we're thinking about some of those big decisions that we make, when we think about new policies that we introduce. The context in which we're operating in, I just remind everyone, is a context of core funding cuts. It is a context in which local government has been underfunded and attacked by central government, and it is undermining our capacity to deliver for the people out there in the communities that rely on our services. And the decisions that we take will have negative consequences. Okay. We want to mitigate those negative consequences. We want to get the best we can for the people of South Lanarkshire, but the decisions that have been imposed on us by the Scottish Government are leading to the underfunding of services, and that will have negative implications for our services. And if we believe in equality, and we believe in sustainability, and we believe in getting better for the people of South Lanarkshire, then we need better budget settlements from the Scottish Government. Councillor Ross.
In light of your comments, Joe, I would hope that you would be trying to use your influence for the new Labour administration at Westminster to give fair funding to Scotland to enable our Scottish Government to provide local government with the provision of funding that is necessary for us to carry out the duties that we require to do. You go on about the Scottish Government all the time, but I don't hear you ever saying that the change that we're going to be promised from the Labour administration is going to provide what we need. Because all I hear at the present time is to expect doom and gloom in the autumn statement. So I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that you can use your influence to make sure that that's not the case. Thanks.
Thank you. You are wrong. There is to be no return to austerity, and I will lobby for the maximum investment in Scotland and in South Lanarkshire, and I will expect the Scottish Government to pass on a fair share of that funding to this council. Councillor Robb.
Hello. Maybe I can make a helpful suggestion about the impact assessments in terms of sustainability in the future. This year, the personnel are looking at an employee travel plan as part of the climate work, and perhaps we can look at mitigations for flights in future years. If a flight is deemed absolutely necessary, we can look at carbon neutraling that flight and do the best we can. Minimise it, but if we have to for certain circumstances, make sure that in the employee travel plan we pick up mitigations and carbon neutral them.
I think we're happy. I'm seeing nods to suggest we're happy to take that suggestion away and look at it. And I would perhaps make the point that international travel of that kind is now very rare in South Lanarkshire. OK, if there are no other questions, then can we agree to note that report? And I'll bring the meeting to... There's no items of urgent business, so I'll bring the meeting to a close. Thank you.